world surrounded by franchises, reboots, and shared universes. An elite team of podcasters will risk body and soul to investigate the depths of intellectual properties, one multiverse, subgenre, and trend at a time. Who are we? We're the IP Squad. Welcome back to the IP Squad and our ongoing investigation into the Alien and Predator franchises and franchise that they briefly shared together for a short period of time. It burned hot and fast.
I will not hear you slander the long tradition of comics and novels of Alien versus Predator, John.
In comics and novels. In movies, though, it's been a tricky road. I'm John Campbell. Of course, the other voice you hear, my partner for this investigation, Mike Gorgoni.
It me.
Yeah. Well, here we are, Gorgoni, with our... once again, at least for the moment, franchise back on track movies as we end this up. These last two movies are the current state of these franchises.
This is the fourth franchise back on track film we've watched in a row.
No, it is. We've said that before, where it is just. And the thing is, both of these will continue on as canon until somebody stumbles in making something and they have to reboot the timeline again.
Yeah, but look, this one does the clever thing of, like we said, stripping it down, also kind of disregarding everything else.
But by making it a prequel. So it does, but not in a non-destructive way, right?
Yeah.
We're talking, of course, about...
We'll get into the destructive reboots next week.
Yeah, we're talking about 2022's Prey.
Prey. Love Prey.
Love Prey. I think this was, met with the reaction of like, hey, shit, is this good? Like a lot of critics being like, probably going like, oh, Christ, another Predator movie I gotta watch. Oh, God. And then there seemed to be just like, hey, this is good.
Yeah, turns out. Well, the circumstances around this movie's release cannot be ignored because it is a 2022 release, and I don't know if you remember some of the things that happened in, Chex Watch, March of 2020, in terms of a earth-shattering pandemic that swept the globe and caused us all to re-examine our relationship with ourselves, the way we live, and media at large.
Wait, is that what you did? No, I didn't do.
Oh.
I didn't do any of that.
And this was one of those movies that was in production during that time, and also came out at a time where we were not quite ready to get back into theaters yet.
2022 is a weird time for the movies. There were movies coming out, but this did come out on Hulu. And what's interesting, we'll talk about next week's movie, was supposed to be a Hulu release, but due to the success of this movie on Hulu, got rethought.
So this is a movie that came out kind of a little stealthily. So when you talk about critics' reaction, it's just like, oh, wait, hold on. Is this great?
I think there was also a thing about like, oh, God, and it's their streaming movie?
Yeah.
And I will say, there's a lot of reading some of the reviews from the time. People are like, why didn't they put this in theaters?
Not remembering the pandemic that was just in the midst of
but
sweeping.
This deserves to be seen on a big screen, Gorgoni.
Yeah, and again, 2022 was this fuzzy period in which okay, we've got vaccines rolled out. People are thinking we got a handle on this whole COVID thing. Again, let's remind folks, COVID still around. Get vaccinated, why don't you?
Yeah, I know. Anyway, I like people go ever since COVID ended, you're like, wait, what?
No, the lockdown ended and the strictest measures are done. But like scarlet fever or any other pandemic, which has gripped the world, we've learned and adapted to it, and we can still survive.
Okay, I had to look this up. 2022 is the first time. This is the first year where they really are the rolling movies back into theaters, because that is, lest we forget, the year of Maverick. That was when everyone went Top Gun crazy.
Godzilla versus Kong saved cinema, John. I know this.
Was that 2022?
Hell yeah, it was.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was maybe one could argue instantly dwarfed by one Top Gun.
I don't know what
Maverick.
you're talking about. Two titans fought, and when they fight, everyone loses. Though, of course, they had to unite at the end to fight Mechagodzilla, as we all remember.
Yeah, as we all remember. Yeah, but I'm looking at you had your Top Gun Maverick. By the end of the year, you had Avatar, Black Panther, and Doctor. So things were rolling. There were three Marvel movies out that year. But yeah, it was still we were still testing stuff. It still felt like we're tiptoeing back into trying. And even now, it's, the box office is still in a weird place, which I don't think is all COVID related.
Right. So that being said,
Yeah.
the fact that everyone experienced this film on a small screen,
Yes.
relatively speaking, I think speaks to the smaller, more intimate nature of this film as well.
That's the thing about when critics are saying that. I don't disagree, of course. I mean, it's a gorgeous movie, but there's almost something that this movie kind of sneaks up on you in its presentation, and seeing it as a streaming movie kind of, I think, works for that.
It speaks to something you've talked about a bit on the back on the action shelf, and I think about quite a bit when I'm approaching action films in general. My first thought when approaching an action film is always like, would this look better with VHS scan lines? And sometimes you need the okay, the distractions of the world exist around you, and like a slightly worse quality can weirdly enhance a dirtier, grittier film.
Yeah, I mean, those
I'm not saying
the
this
heyday
is a
of
bad
canon.
quality film, but I've never had a chance to see this movie in a theater with theater sound or a theater screen.
I'm sure it would play super well, but yeah. No, I think so much of this movie is designed from the ground up as we're stripping down everything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're getting rid of all the bullshit that has damaged this franchise, really. Because going from The Predator to this is wild.
It's and again, I had not seen The Predator before we were recording this show, so I went from from Predators to Prey, which felt like a smooth transition.
Well, because
compared to the
even
other.
as big as Predators is, it was trying to do, to some extent, there was some similar thinking as in this movie about getting back to the basics of what this franchise is. Whereas we talked about, the word they used over there was they wanted to eventize The Predator, and you're like, maybe this isn't a franchise that needs that.
Yeah. The fact that the big spectacular set piece in the third act of this movie is just a bunch of French Canadian fur trappers getting fucked up in a burnt out wood with this predator stomping around, killing everybody. That's all you need. I don't need a spaceship flying over small town America, cutting people's legs off with force fields. I just need a predator walking around in the woods, killing guys that might otherwise be considered badasses.
Well, I think that's a thing people forget about. Almost instantly, people forgot how small scale and yet intense the original movie was, because it blew up into this massive box office smash and became this instant classic. So right away it was like, oh, that thing's huge. But if you actually look at it, it's aside from the very beginning where it kicks off as an 80s action movie, then it turns into this very intense survival thriller.
Well, and even Predator 2, as much as it starts out as this gang war film starting out, and quickly develops into this manhunt noir movie with this killing alien at the center of it.
Right. That's the thing that I think really is, I watching these back to back like we did, The Predator and now Prey, and particularly looking at their third acts, and we know the third act of the last movie got, beefed up and overinflated. I was thinking about that where I was going man, none of the other movies end like The Predator. These, at the end of the day, do, the whole point of this franchise is hunter versus hunter always, right? It always feels like it needs to come down to the brain versus brawn aspect of it, right? You defeat the predator by
outmaneuvering it, by outthinking it, because you're not going to match it on a one-to-one level. That was a big thing, and believe me, you'll hear this when we get to highs and lows. The big thing, people go like, oh, God, this 90-pound girl is going to beat the Predator. It's like, Jesus, even Arnold didn't beat the Predator with raw strength.
Yeah. No.
The whole point is always that humans are going to be craftier, are going to be wilier than this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that's the whole what I love about this film is the puzzle pieces you see in the defeat of this Predator in this film are like that is the step-by-step journey of our main character here, Naru, played by Amber Midthunder.
Yeah.
You see all the pieces that will add up to the Predator's defeat as she like gets to the end third act, right?
Absolutely.
And the cleanness of this screenplay, I think, is one of its big strengths.
100%. This script is talk about things I always shouted on the Action Show back when we were doing that show was oftentimes simpler is so much better in action movies. And in this movie, this is a pure action movie in that the action is the storytelling, right? Mm-hmm. This is a story of, you realize by the end of it, and especially revisiting, I've watched this a couple times now, even just between, when it came out and doing it for this. So, every single piece when you rewatch, you're like, that's where that is. That's how that thing is. It's so brilliantly constructed in also a way that doesn't feel like, oh, they're setting that up, because the movie is just so minimalist. In a way, it's so simple. It's so, it's not dialogue free, but the dialogue is very, sparse and only when it's necessary. Things aren't underdeveloped. Everything is developed just enough. All the relationships are clear enough to get us to this.
If anything, in my watch this time around, there were a couple of lines of dialogue where I was just like, that was just to like explain to the people watching this movie what's happening here.
Yeah.
You could have done without that, and there was enough expression in the faces of the actors and enough like focus in what the camera is pointing at and the visual storytelling here that could have gotten across without actually a line of dialogue here.
Sure,
they could have gone harder on the minimalist aesthetic.
Oh, here. I have no doubt. That I'm sure. Once again, let's still not as much as this movie feels so fresh from it. It's still a studio film, and somebody's still going like, you better punch that up because a test audience is they didn't understand that or something, because I do think this is a perfect example of what often is the case when these franchises are resuscitated is that it was sort of like only because we had so many failures that somebody was like, fine, let the guy make the tiny little movie about Native Americans, whatever, this franchise is dead in the water, so here's the cheap, and that ends up being the best one. I always talk about you only get Batman Begins because you had Batman and Robin. If you didn't have the spectacular failure of Batman and Robin, somebody going, I want to make a stripped down noir crime Batman movie, wouldn't have gotten through the door at Warner Brothers.
Yeah, and like Dan Trachtenberg is a guy that you and I have been following for I don't know, over 2 decades at this point.
He's always been poised to be the next big thing in film, right? Like it always kind of feels like that. I mean, obviously I think the Portal short film is probably what
I was looking up when that actually dropped. That was way later than I thought. That was 2011 was the Portal short he directed.
Yeah. And that was a thing that definitely showed a crazy amount of promise and was a clever adaptation of a known thing.
And then you and I are both huge fans of 10 Cloverfield Lane, which was like a very unexpected evolution.
Holy shit.
Okay, Cloverfield is a franchise now, but it's a franchise of like...
It's an anthology thing.
Anthology,
set in this world of giant monsters. But once again... what did he do in that? He took all the spectacle out of it and stripped it down to these character things. Most of that movie is 3 people in a room together, and this word is tossed around too much, but I really think it fits there. It is so Hitchcockian, right? It is all about what is that guy doing over there? What are the underpinnings of these characters? What are their motivations? No, if you haven't seen 10 Cloverfield Lane, holy shit, that's an amazing piece of work.
I mean, for John Goodman's performance alone.
I mean, awards mean whatever, but robbed of a nomination. Obviously, completely written off because it's a genre fair. It had monsters in it, so fuck that, right? It's a problem with what But my God, I mean, that is. It's hard to say actually, but because he has so many good things. But that's amongst career best work for John Goodman.
I tend to agree, but I'm biased because I like genre fiction.
Well, that's always the thing, right? Is that but I feel like we're also well enough versed in it that we can go like, oh, that's like primo genre fiction. As is this. I think with both of and unfortunately in between, he doesn't make another movie between 2016. He directs some TV. Some good TV, but between 2016 and 2022, he doesn't make anything because he's trying to make Uncharted.
Yeah,
which is it's sort of like a big lost thing for him. I know it was like he really wanted to make Uncharted, and worked on it for a long time.
Yeah, he directed the pilot of The Boys.
Did he do the first one?
I could be wrong.
Yes, he did. It was the pilot, and he did a Black Mirror. And he did an episode of less so. He did the pilot of The Lost Symbol, which was them trying to bring the Dan Brown, Robert Langdon stuff to TV. Not a bad impulse, but it's not Trachtenberg's fault that didn't.
Did
work.
Not know this show existed.
Yeah, Peacock tried to do. They're like, okay, those movies kind of fizzled out. What if? And actually, I didn't watch it, so I guess I'm part of the problem there. But I did think like, oh, that's probably a better way to do it as like a streaming series. Take that character in a streaming series.
I guess,
if you're going to do it,
season per novel.
Yeah, my thing is, unlike like a lot of stuff Amazon does, I'm just not a Dan Brown guy. He's not a Tom Clancy or James Patterson or Lee Child to me, so it's a little bit like
not enough chapters describing the mechanics of submarine warfare.
Yeah, that's the problem. If I don't know how a Tomahawk missile operates, then am I able to follow? Yeah, actually, speaking of a big influence on at least the structure of this movie, because this movie does a thing I wish more movies did, and I'm Trachtenberg being the kind of nerd that I am, is like, oh, we took the Hunt for Red October approach to the language.
Yeah,
where basically. It switches into English, and it's like, oh, it's being translated for us. But then the French guys are still speaking French, because we're only translating the indigenous language. The Comanche.
Right. Though there is a cut of this movie that is just straight Comanche with subtitles.
Yes. Yep.
As like a language preservation project, which I super respect.
Yeah. Marvel did that as well with What If.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah.
With Mohawk.
Yeah. No, I mean, that was a big thing with this too. I think that really also got people on the side of this movie is it isn't just casually using Comanche or indigenous American tribes as like a fun genre aesthetic.
Yeah, no, they're trying to. I mean, look, it by no means is it like a cultural analysis of Comanche peoples, but they're trying to be as authentic as possible.
I mean, they talk about it. They brought in Comanche activists to pour over the script and make changes just to of course, it's still a Predator movie. This is not a preachy film. This is not trying to be a history lesson. It's still, a rad badass action movie, but I think what this movie shows, and I hope people and other stuff have done this, I do feel like there's in general been I've noticed a lot in film and particularly in television, a huge influx of indigenous actors, creators, and stories that I see much more of than I ever have, which is nice. But there does seem to be a thing about like, hey, we can still make a fun genre movie, but not just go like whatever Comanche and shit,
Yeah, look. There was an era in which John Wayne was cast as Genghis Khan, and we have moved on from this.
Yeah, that's pretty far back, yeah. Holy shit, The Conqueror is bad for a lot of reasons, and that's a big one. God, that's a terrible movie. But yeah, for sure, there is this feeling of things that I'm sure you and I wouldn't even notice, but the people who do notice are going, that's right. That's what that would look like. That's, and that you can feel an authenticity here. Once again, even if you're not recognizing the individual, it feels real. And I think also something I like in genres, the more real the world feels, the more interesting it is when an alien comes into that, right?
And the more you're willing to go with the crazier aspects of an 8-foot tall super predator that can get shot in the head and still keep killing people.
But we've talked about, this is a pretty good predator design.
How do you feel about the predator design in this one? Because like the rest of the movie, it feels very stripped down.
Yeah.
This predator feels like it is more, I don't know, primal might be the word, but it's like more nasty. I don't know.
That's what I like
'Cause
about
he's
it.
got the bone mask and
Yeah.
like all of his weapons are like close quarter stuff. The only ranged weapon he has is the dart slinger.
But he's
thing.
still shooting projectiles. He doesn't have the laser cannon of the one in the first
Yeah.
movie and stuff like that. Yeah, everything about this guy feels more vicious and nasty, and even the way his mouth opens up wider, and it has the big, oh my god, when she tears the tooth out of his mouth and stabs him in the face with it.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is everything about this movie, even though it's a movie about an alien stalking people, everything feels, this feels like The Revenant, you know, right? It feels that just like, you just feel and I think the first movie has that. I think this is the first one since the first movie to feel that, like, you can feel the mud, you can feel the environment in a way that, you know, The Predator is so, you know, not to keep shitting on that movie, but it really is a lesson in, like, not understanding what the appeal of your franchise is, right? Is that movie felt so glossy and taking place in a Hollywood world, whereas even Predator 2, you could feel the dinge of the city and the smoke in the air, you know. There's an atmosphere.
Xenopedia calls this predator the feral predator.
That's perfect. That's very much what
I
it feels like. This guy feels a little out of control too. Like when the way that they show him and he drops off and he's killing animals, it feels the guy in the first movie feels much more choosy about his moments. This guy is still, you know, acting like a predator and hunting other hunters and stuff. But this guy seems a little bit more like vicious about it, and a little bit more bloodthirsty.
Yeah, I mean, this is, man, the fact that I know this, of the like predator species like divisions we've seen, this guy fits into like the super predator molds that we saw in Predators.
Yeah.
So this isn't like one of the jungle hunter ones. That's why we have like the bigger mouth and the weird eyes and stuff.
And like I said, this like thirst for killing in a way that is a little bit more sadistic than, I mean, the thing where they find all the skinned buffalo. And you're like, what the?
Well, that wasn't the
that
predator.
wasn't. That's right. That wasn't the predator. You're right. But the was the snake was him though.
The snake was him. He also does like the wolf and the bear, and obviously like isn't afraid to like gut the wounded French Canadian guy who had his leg chopped off.
I mean,
he steps on.
Yeah. I get. Well, they're drawing the line right with the skinned. But there's sort of this idea about like this guy is going further than he needs to. I mean, it needs to, is, you know, I mean, because they're all psychos, obviously. But there is a thing about like I said, the original Predator in the first movie feels much more tactical and calculating and sort of striking when it's necessary, whereas this guy seems to really dig into like the blood and guts of it.
Right. Because I mean, they're also drawing the parallel between this predator and like the predator as they function as a whole, and the like nastiness of humans, right? Because it's the French Canadian fur trappers that are responsible for just like skinning all the buffalo but leaving the bodies behind,
right? Which of course, you know, is like one of those things you learn in elementary school about the Native American treatment of animals and the hunt and things like that is you know, is such a disgrace when they come upon that.
Well, and it's just horrifying on a like purely moral, like waste level. You can look up pictures of literal mountains of buffalo bones because they were just killing them willy-nilly as they were laying tracks across the United States of the train.
It's about time, though, we had some villainous French Canadians in a movie. I think they've had it too good for too long. I'm saying it now. I do like just how nasty and old-timey they are, though.
Oh yeah, for sure.
'Cause-
Especially the main one who ends up like getting his leg chopped off
Yeah.
by Naru, and then it's getting like picked at by rats. Like,
Like-
oh, so gnarly.
Oh my god, that scene! I will say, is this the most? This has got to be the most horror movie Predator film, right?
I lean 2 for that one personally.
Well, that has some real slasher movie aspects to it.
yeah.
But just in terms of like this, there's so many moments in this movie that are like, oh, and I mean, 2 has that a little bit too, but it feels so much more real here.
And AVP Requiem is trying for that, but I think it's landing more on like schlock.
I was gonna say it gets into like silly grindhouse. It's so gory that you're like, that's what I'm saying. Everything in this movie, and I think this movie has a great, we talk a lot about this, great use of when it uses CGI. It's really well done in a way that kind of hides the seams of it. Everything kind of flow. It doesn't feel overly produced. I gotta look at what the budget on this thing was because it's smaller in scale, but it doesn't feel like it's this is the lesser one. $65 million. All right, that's pretty good for a movie shot in Calgary with basically unknown actors. I say basically unknown because they're all working actors, but there's no stars in this movie.
Right. Like Amber Midthunder, our main character, had been in stuff before.
Oh, yeah.
You and I would recognize her from Legion.
Yep.
And like she's one of those people where like you'd see her around.
Yeah, I mean,
and,
of
like,
course,
now she's in the
we would all remember her from the
Last Airbender.
Yeah, we all
action
remember her
series.
from the Liam Neeson classic, The Ice Road. Or was that just me?
Sure, just you.
These roads are icy.
I mean, you and I both had seen her in a couple episodes of Longmire.
Yeah,
Like,
no, she's definitely. But that's the thing, and several of the people in this are known character actors, to a certain extent. Well, actually, maybe that's not true. Dakota Beavers is it.
yeah, I mean, honestly, because there's not Amber Midthunder and Dakota Beavers and maybe like one other person has like speaking roles.
Yeah.
The French fur trappers like are talking to each other, but we're not supposed to understand what they're
I
saying.
mean, the French fur
Except
trappers
for-
don't. I'm just looking at this. I didn't notice this before. The French fur trappers don't have names. It's Big Beard, Waxed Mustache.
The only one who does is Raphael because he's the one with the flintlock pistol.
Yes, that's right.
That's Bennett Taylor who played that guy.
I gotta say, look up Mike Patterson who plays Big Beard. All of his IMDb profile photos are hilarious. And
This is one of those character actors
Yeah.
who's just like, how hammy can I be?
yeah, this guy is a big deal in his improv group.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You can see me at the Giggle Pit every Saturday night.
Hey, he was in 56 episode of Raven's Quest. What is this?
I don't know.
There's no plot, but apparently it ran from 2018 to 2022.
Something in Canada.
Maybe. Yeah, I have no idea what this is. Yep, country of origin, Canada.
Yeah, yeah. Looks like it's a kid show.
Kid show on Canadian TV.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because this movie is, they're up in Calgary shooting this movie, which once again just it does also show you like oh yeah, look at what happens if you just go out in the woods. It's you've got some instant production quality.
I will say my one I don't even want to say nitpick, but my one issue with this film is some of the scenes shot at night are so dark.
Oh yeah,
And that is a result of them basically only using natural light sources in some of the filming, and like it's an effective technique, but it can also, especially when you're watching on a small screen, like you'd best turn off all of your lights before watching this movie.
It's definitely a look that a lot of period stuff is going for. Robert Eggers has really been championing that in his films. The idea about like we're not bringing in light sources, that wouldn't have been there in the time period. So I like that because I think that further adds to just everything about this movie. Like I said, everything just feels so real and so grounded. And so then, including that it's not lit like a movie. And obviously with today's cameras, you can shoot in basically no light and still produce, an image.
Right. And so you have shots where the only because you have torchlight as opposed to like the nighttime lights of the sky, like stars and the moon, it actually creates deeper shadows on the outskirts of the frame. So you have these frames that are almost just silhouettes
Yeah.
of people, especially in that first sequence with the lion hunt. And it can make for a film that is like hard to watch isn't right, but like hard to really figure out what's happening on the screen at times.
Yeah, and a lot of that, though, is, I mean, especially when you're into the hunt sequences and stuff like that, a lot of that really, I think, adds to the tension of this, is you're as in the dark as the characters are. You're in these foreboding, huge forests, and you can't see what's there, you know?
Yeah.
And also, you can't see the predator because he's fucking cloaked.
Yeah. And this movie like doubles down on that lock-in on perception to the point where the film cuts anytime Naru is knocked unconscious, which I thought was an interesting choice. Like this movie could almost be like third person, like locked in perspective on Naru, if not for a few cutaways to the predator.
Right. Yeah. Which is, you know, I like that because this is taking us, you know, it's not acting like this is the first movie. They know, you know, we all know what the predator, and it's interesting actually how little this movie does to be like, well, if you don't know what a predator is, folks, you know, you have her learning, but it's because it's all in the action, right? You have her learning what this thing is, what it wants, and what it's capable of by experiencing it doing those things.
Right. Like she runs up against the predator, like code, quote unquote, when she gets her leg trapped and it comes up to her and it's just like, I'm not into it.
Yeah, and it just, everything is, you know, the figuring out of the whatever the tincture or, you know, thing that makes your blood cold.
Yeah, there's some herb that she takes that like reduces body temperature, and it's like that's one of those like I don't think that's real, but shrug, sure.
No, I let me say it's certainly, even if there's some truth to it, you wouldn't get low enough that you're not reading on a thermal. You know, that's pretty wild,
Right?
But you're like, okay, it's a cool idea. I want to see if I'm just looking through the trivia, see if there's anything about where they even got that from. You know, but like stuff like that where it's like, oh, she's thinking this, and then like we're talking about, the whole movie is. You're not realizing it, though. That's why I think the script is so good, is you're seeing all these things. Oh, she gets stuck in the mud. Well, that will be key to how she defeats it later. She sees how the targeting system of the helmet works, and she uses that to kill the thing, you know?
Okay. The Comanche word they use, tutsia, it literally translates to flower.
Okay.
So it is a completely fictional thing in this film.
Yeah. You know, you do buy some level of that when you put a space alien in it, though, right?
Sure. Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, if I'm going to buy that thing, then okay, sure.
Yeah, fair enough.
And it's a cool idea. Because it's also their take on the... It's interesting because I feel like if you're a Predator fan, when she falls in the mud the first time, you're like, oh, that's that's how she's getting... No, but it's a different way she goes about it, and the mud is used for a different purpose.
And honestly, when she's just like standing there and has baited the camp and like just takes that casual like 4-inch step to the side to let the predator walk past her, like that's a good action beat.
It's a great moment, man. Like I said, the thing actually that this movie does that I think is so hard. I've talked about this. I think both the franchises, Predator and Alien, suffer from, of course, is the more of these you make, the less threatening these creatures become because you get so used to them, and they're so... The fact that this movie finds a way to make the predator scary again, and to just... Because the response is always like, what if we had 5 predators? You're like, actually, it's more effective if you just make one really threatening. And
what if we had one predator gut a bear and then lift it over his head? Like, that's enough for me, man.
That's a lot. And also the idea that you've gone so much farther back in time that you're like, well, shit, they don't even have the machine guns that we saw do nothing in the first movie. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing is, like, those guys had super weapons and they got fucked up. These people have bows and arrows and an axe and guns that are, you know, not great.
Take a whole ass minute to reload after you shoot once.
That moment when the fur trappers shoot at him and then it's just like nothing. Oh God, I gotta stop the thing. You know, fuck. I don't know how this works. Like, Oh God. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Oh my God. Those things. I mean, and they were shit guns. They were horribly inaccurate, and you know,
Like
they
I
didn't.
was watching this with my partner last night, and like after there's that bit where Naru like lifts the gun up to the back of the Predator's head
Yeah.
after she's gotten it like where she wants it,
Yeah.
and she fires and hits him and like clips him in the back of the head,
Yeah.
and Emily turns to me and is just like, "How is that thing not dead?" And I'm like, "Okay, first off,
Yeah.
alien super killer, don't worry about it.
Right.
Second off, those guns even from that distance were horribly inaccurate.
Right. Yeah.
The fact that it doesn't explode her hand off is a miracle."
No, that's the thing is, you were more likely for those things to backfire or just not. I mean, anything got in there, they weren't going to fire, you know?
Yeah.
I do like them. I mean, I love that moment, though, when she just caps a Predator.
Yeah,
You know, it's
and this is
anything-
probably the most messed up we see a Predator get and
Yeah.
still keep fighting.
Well,
Which
that
I love.
I think that further adds to just this thing is fucking unstoppable. Like,
Yeah. When it gets its arm chopped off and then just keeps coming at her, and you're like, "Oh fuck!"
it really adds to this feeling that the other movies try to tell us, which is these things are these unrelenting, ultimate killing machines. But oftentimes it's like they're saying that, or I feel that this movie's just doing it. You're just watching it do that, and you're like, "Fuck, this thing's impossible."
Yeah, when it's like driving the shield towards her neck and the
Oh!
rocks, and you're just, yeah, it's good stuff.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is like something Trachtenberg understands in both this and Cloverfield Lane is actually intimate moments of action are far more tense than big sprawling set pieces.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why it's an interesting thing where he's a genre guy, but like I said in this, and I really feel like he's like a thriller guy. He's like a De Palma or a Hitchcock in that sense. He knows how to zero in on these moments, even if it's inside of the genre trappings. It's always very intimate.
Well, it's like comic book panel instincts, right?
Yeah.
It's where in the frame, the panel, the what have you, do you stop and zoom in and focus on? Because you can have these big panoramic shots of a spaceship flying through the air and characters scrambling on top of it, but that's not going to be nearly as tense as a big metal blade being shoved towards someone's neck. And
Right.
just honing in on the flesh on one side of the frame and the steel on the other side as it gets closer.
He really understands the power of a close up inside of like it's like more important than the action is what a person reacting to that is. What's so intense about that is not only is that blade coming at her, but it's the look on her face. I mean, Amber Midland, I feel like it's taken for granted how good she is in this movie because it often is it's always my point about action acting. It's kind of a thing once again, and I know this from having hosted the Action Shelf for several years. You realize how difficult it is when you see it done poorly. Like how much of this movie has to be carried without dialogue and her physicality and her facial expressions, and that's actually really hard to do. Though it looks super easy when it's done well.
The scene that typifies that for me is the bit where she's being sucked down into the bog, and
Yes.
you see this look of calculation on her face, and it could so easily be played as like wide-eyed thrashing panic, right? And like you see the calculation though of her just being like, okay, I've got one more throw on this, I cannot fuck it up.
Yeah. I think the moment the arc she plays without any dialogue of being this kind of impetuous, girl in the tribe who's like, I want to be out there, I want to be out hunting, to when she finally paints the streak down her chin and it's just like, I am the hunter now. She's no longer like, I want to do it, why can't I do it? She's just like, this is what I'm fucking doing now.
Well, because it's the line of dialogue that she gets earlier in the film, which is just like, oh, you have to do this because you have to do this from her
Right.
brother. It's just like when you're back against the wall and you're hunting something that's hunting you, you don't have a choice. You either get it done or you die, and those are your options.
And I love their whole dynamic and the way that, like, of course, there's a ton of guys in the tribe who are shitty to her, and you're like, you're all going to get fucking killed by the predator, and I'm going to kind of enjoy it. But that they make Tabe, who's her brother,
Played by Dakota Beavers.
Dakota Beavers, he's not like a piece of shit. He's not just a guy who's like, hey, know your place, girl. But it is sort of just like, I don't think you know what this is to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying you don't have the skills, because you're pretty fucking rad with that hatchet. And by the way, hatchet on a rope is just a cool weapon. It's just awesome. It's very simple, but it
Yeah.
just is so badass.
It looks great. Like, thinking about the mechanics of that makes my brain itch, but it looks rad.
I love doing podcasts with you and Brendan Jones, who are like, but would that? I'm like, oh, it was just cool, man.
Look, John, you get all up in the business of modern firearms.
Yes, I do.
get up in the business of anything that might be implemented in a D&D game.
There you go. Yeah, that's it exactly. I have no issue with any of the firearms use in this movie. It's all right on, because
It's all above board. Yeah.
well, because they're accurate to the time period and to how unreliable those guns were.
Yeah.
Although the point you want to make is obviously, like, I think kind of one of the starting inclinations of this movie is, where did that flintlock pistol that Glover gets handed at the end of Predator 2 come from? I think Trachtenberg is talking about that's kind of the like starting of the pitch for this movie.
Because yes, lest we forget, let us bring us to the Wayback Machine of this this season of the IP Squad.
Yeah.
Way back in Predator 2,
Yeah.
our 4th episode,
Yeah.
we talked about how the end of Predator 2 kind of cracked a bunch of nerd brains open because they saw this sequence in which they saw all the trophies
Yeah.
taken by the Predators over the eons, one of which included the Xenomorph skull, which made
Yeah.
everyone freak the fuck out.
Yeah.
But the thing that Danny Glover gets handed as like a token of respect at the end of that movie, and which establishes that the Predators have been visiting Earth for who knows how long, is a flintlock pistol with the name Raphael. Let me get his name here.
He's just credited as Raphael on the credits here. So.
But the pistol has the
Yeah, the
name,
full
emblazoned
name,
on it.
yeah.
Raphael Adolini.
Yeah.
And so that pistol is given to Naru, Amber Midthunder's character in this movie.
Right.
So the question becomes, how do that get into hand of Predator to give to Danny Glover?
Unanswered by this movie. Which is
But-
interesting. Yeah.
At the end of this film, over the initial credits,
Yeah.
we have like a retelling of the movie in the form of like interpretive native art, right?
Right.
And the very last cut of that is, okay, Amber Midthunder back with her tribe, victorious. But last flash before we cut to normal streaming credits is 3 Predator ships descending out of the sky,
Right. Yeah.
setting up potential sequel. Maybe Amber Midthunder has to give the pistol away. Who knows?
I mean, yeah, the sequel to this movie is not a continuation of this, so I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, and it might also be one of those instances of shut up, nerds. It's fine.
Trachtenberg can point to that thing in the credits. Just go, there you go. Somebody can write a comic book about it. You know what? That'd be a great thing to do a comic book of.
They came back and they got her, which sucks as like a thought about the end of this film.
Or
but,
what if they take her like they took Adrian Brody and she has to go fight on the the planet or something like that? I don't know. Any number of stories could be taken, about how that happens. Because Trachtenberg is making another Predator movie that will come out this year in 2025. Predator
is it?
Badlands.
Wow.
Yeah. They've already finished filming.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah, Predator Badlands. But he has said it takes place in the future. Not just the future of this, the future of from now.
The future for us, which I've been saying for a couple episodes now. I think that is the more interesting way to take the Predator franchise, is make it like truly sci-fi.
The only thing that's been he had a quote saying it's set in the future and not on Earth.
I mean, that is rad. I want to see Wayland Yutani getting fucked up by a Predator.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the movie is set in the future on an alien planet. He said to Empire Magazine in November of last year, and we know Elle Fanning is the main character.
Okay.
That's literally all we know, and it's called Predator Badlands.
I mean, I like Elle Fanning.
She's great. Yeah, bring it on. I mean, look, at this point, I mean, we were, both of us on the Trachtenberg bandwagon and have been for a while, but him, if he just wants to stick around and do Predator, because he's talked about the idea of this movie is not like, oh, welcome to the new franchise. It opens it up to be an anthology franchise. You can have different Predator stories set in different places and different time periods and different, there's any number of stories to be told here. If anything, this movie is so freeing for the franchise, right? Because it's like, no, we're not doing the thing that the Predator's trying to do and trying to build a huge mythos around this that can connect to these things. That's still there if somebody wants to. I think, I'm not saying that couldn't be done, but I think that is a trickier road to go down.
For sure. Let's see. It's also being written by the same guy, Patrick Asen.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same group is going forward with Predator Badlands, and it's just, but the idea being is just it's a continuation of the world of Predator, but a different snapshot of it.
Okay, I mean, hey, I'm down.
Yeah, I mean, they literally have said no one else in the cast, so but it's in post production, so I don't know. November 7th of this year, it's set to come out.
All right. Well,
they haven't said whether that's going to be in theaters or on Hulu, though.
Yeah.
He also said that there's another secret Predator movie that will come out. Though that potentially would be direct to streaming and animated, he's implied.
Okay. I mean, hey, I'm down for animated stuff. I mean, we've talked about that like AVP animated series that just doesn't exist, even though it's fully done.
Yeah, that makes no sense. And that just, do you guys like money? I mean, I don't know. Like, even if that's not great, like, it's something. I also, that's a real return to, I mean, we remember this in the 2000s. Like, every blockbuster, whether it be the Riddick movies or Van Helsing or Hellboy, had these straight to video. The Animatrix, of course, had these.
Well, that's like peak of the mountain right there.
I think that was kind of what kicked it off, and then everybody had to have that. We talked about this on Meet the Monsters when we did Van Helsing, that I've never seen it, but there's an entire animated Van Helsing prequel about him hunting Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that takes place before the movie.
Wasn't there one for Gods of Egypt too? Like, that feels like the last of them.
Yeah, Gods of Egypt feels like that's a good demo, because that was 2016. Yeah, that feels like the end of that era of blockbuster filmmaking.
Yeah.
Oh, God, was there one for Gods? I'm looking here.
I could be wrong. Because that whole movie feels like an animated fever dream.
Let's see. There was a tie-in mobile game.
Oh, well, okay.
I don't think there was an animated thing, but there was a tie. You may be thinking of something else that was like Gods of Egypt, though.
Maybe.
Because there was a lot of shit like this, man. Oh, man. Yeah, I do like, there's just an entire section of the Wikipedia for Gods of Egypt about why did they not cast any Egyptian people? Backlash to the fact that, like, no one in the movie is Egyptian. Gerard Butler is one of the gods of Egypt. Yeah.
But choices were made and they were all bad.
When Gerard Butler, when you have Gods of Egypt, great, and your stars are Gerard Butler and Jamie Lannister, I think you're in trouble. You're off to a bad start.
Yeah.
Which is sad, because that's Alex Proyas who directed that, who I love, who did The Crow and Dark City. Oh, how the mighty eventually fall.
Look, eventually we all live long enough to become the villains of our own story.
It's a sad thing where you just going, like, eventually you're just like, hey man, I gotta direct something. Gods of Egypt, sure, yeah, why not? I mean, because I feel like that and Clash of the Titans might as well be the same movie.
What was the sequel to Clash of Titans?
Wrath of the Titans.
Yeah, both of those weren't.
I don't know that I saw the second one. We saw the first one, but I don't know if I saw the second one.
We definitely did. I remember just getting so mad at the first one when they threw Bubo like away and said it was garbage in the film.
Yeah. Who was that for?
That was for, like, hey nerds, remember that thing you like? It's garbage now.
That's what I'm saying. It's like what a way to lose. Because, look, the original movie, I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece, but it's charming. It's got a kitschy charm to it. It's fun.
Yeah. So when you take one of the main, like, memorable props from the
Oh,
original
of
film,
course.
and then tell your audience this is garbage. We are throwing it
That
away.
thing you
We're
like-
the new hotness.
Yeah, that thing you like sucks. You're like, no, you know what sucks? Your movie. But apparently made enough to get a sequel. Anyway, back to Titans cast. Anyway, here we no.
We cover movies exclusively about the Greek gods and other associated pantheons.
There'll at least be like a Hercules season of the IP Squad at some point because there's
Ooh,
enough of those.
boy,
ones.
that's a rough ride, John.
Yeah, there are a few high points there, and they're mainly that Disney movie.
I'm struggling to remember any good Hercules movie. I mean, look, Hercules in New York is enjoyable for its own reasons.
Yeah. Gorgoni, did you spot the Wilhelm scream in this movie?
Oh yeah, 100% heard the Wilhelm scream.
Loved it.
I finely tuned ear where the Wilhelm scream.
I know. I was just like, whoo! There
Yeah.
it is. I remember there was a move a while back. People were going like, we should phase that out. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. That should be forever in film.
Look, you can use it too much. I agree
Oh,
with
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But if
A
you don't
well-placed-
use it once, yeah.
Oh, so good. Can we also talk about how this movie has one of cinema's greatest dogs?
Oh man, I'm so, like the easy move in this film would have been to kill the dog, right? And I'm so happy it doesn't.
You know what I like though is like the more radical move is not to kill the dog now. That's become
yeah.
the unexpected thing. Because yeah, it is. But this dog is so great.
Leads the bear away. It attacks the predator. It barks at the French guys. It's good.
This is
Good
like
dog.
yeah, this is a dream dog right here. Dream dog companion. And it was heartened to see it was a rescue dog.
Oh,
Yeah, had no previous movie experience. Was adopted specifically for the movie only 2 months before shooting.
that's wild to hear,
Yeah.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually, like, film dogs are trained specifically for that purpose because
Yeah.
they need to be able to, hit their marks.
Amber Midthunder said of Coco, which is the dog's real name,
Coco.
described Coco as a little bit of a hot mess, but in a sweet way, and it obviously ended up all fine because she was great and everybody loves her. But it sounds like maybe early on the dog struggled a little bit with the film performance.
Look, that'll happen with first-time actors.
Yeah, it is. But you know what? It all came out in the end because what a great performance. Also, this is the kind of attention to detail that Trachtenberg would get. Coco is a Carolina dog, a rare breed of wild dog that followed the first humans to cross the Bering Strait 4,500 years ago. And he really wanted to
Hell yeah.
find, this is the dog that would have been there. And so it was you had to find exactly the right dog.
Like some kind of husky, right? Just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
something wolf adjacent.
Something that felt right in the woods, yeah, in some capacity. But he's just like, no, we actually went back and researched the kind of dogs that they would have had, I love that. That's great. And the dog, like I said, the dog is great. The dog is used just enough. It's so endearing.
I love it when it like brings the tomahawk back to her. She's
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, I'm good boy.
Very good dog. Yeah, very, very good dog. That's what I'm talking about. Just there's this attention to detail throughout the movie that isn't also screaming, look at what we did.
Yeah, and it kind of snuck up on people because it wasn't trying to be flashy, right?
Right.
Like when we talk about how this movie kind of surprised people, it was really more in the fact that it was a Predator movie that wasn't trying to be this like marquee, like
Even
tentpole film.
even the references to Predator don't feel like the way they're delivered. If it bleeds, we can kill it. Doesn't feel like.
As opposed to like get to the choppers in
The
the
Predator.
which feels very forced and very like get to the choppers. Oh, because they're motorcycles. I get it, because you can call a motorcycle a chopper. Okay, I don't know.
But that's what I mean. But here it is just like he's just like, well, if it bleeds, we can kill it. Like he's just having it's more of like the parallel realization. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing where it's like, oh, well, this is a reference, but it also probably is what this guy would say. That's the best kind of reference. It isn't just us going, remember Predator, you guys?
Yeah.
Playing the hits.
In terms of references, let us not go without talking about Sarah Schachner, I think is
Yeah.
how you say her last name.
Schachner,
The composer.
maybe? Yeah.
the composer.
Did you
for this
see
film.
how Trachtenberg found her?
No, I'm assuming it's through Assassin's Creed nonsense.
You got it. Trachtenberg.
Hey, nailed
Trachtenberg. I was gonna say because it's very Trachtenberg was playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla and thought to himself, "God, this music is beautiful. Who did this?" And then went and found her and got her to compose the movie.
Yeah, she's done a bunch of Assassin's Creed stuff. It's
Yeah.
mostly what she's done.
Uh,
She did Valhalla and Origins. I'd say Syndicate.
Yeah. More people need because I think unfortunately just the way video games are viewed, I don't think people immediately think of them as having scores, but of course a lot of them do, and a lot of them are great. And just the idea about just like, oh yeah, who started in video game scores was Michael Giacchino.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah,
I think her the way she echoes some of the original Predator
the Alan
score,
Silvestri stuff,
through different like obviously orchestrations and like instruments, is very different. I think the score for this movie is really, really good.
It's also
I came away.
Yeah, it's not, once again, like everything in the movie, it's not overly bombastic. It rises in the correct moments. It's appropriately minimalist when it needs to be. It's really
Wasn't
effective.
Syndicate, it was Unity. Sorry, Assassin's Creed Unity. That's the French Revolution one.
Okay. I can't say I've played them all. I've
played more than I probably should.
I see she also does a lot of the Call of Duty games now.
She did Modern Warfare 2
And Modern Warfare and Infinite
yeah.
Warfare.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, so it looks like primarily in video games and then some movies.
Yep.
And has also worked
Anthem.
in the
Anthem.
The
music was not the problem with Anthem.
No. Also seems to work in like score arrangements for like Iron Man 3 and stuff like that. Ooh, and Expendables 2.
Known for its score.
Oh yeah, I could not tell you everything in those movies is just we're Expendables and we're kicking ass. Yeah. Oh God, I'll have to do an Expendables season at some point. It's inevitable.
How many of those films are there?
There are 4, which is the rule for IP Squad. There have to be 4, otherwise it's just a trilogy. It has to be 4 to become an IP.
That's fair, I guess.
Especially because Stallone keeps threatening us with like, maybe we turn it into a TV show. You know, it could be an old thing. I mean, we could get the adventures.
Let's cover the John Wick stuff before we get to the Expendables.
Well, John Wick, we're definitely gonna have to cover now that it has a spin-off movie
and a show.
I mean, yeah, John Wick and a comic book and a video game, right? There's a John Wick video game.
There's at least one. I don't remember the reviews of that game being stellar. But
well, I think people are surprised because it's not it's like not a shooter.
It's like a tactical, like isometric, it's like almost stealthy game.
I'll give them credit for going outside the box, but I think it didn't quite give people what they were hoping out of a John Wick experience.
Yeah, they were hoping for something like super hot, and what they got was more of a like strange tactics game.
Like I said, which I appreciate the zigging instead of zagging, but anyway, yeah.
Sometimes you gotta give the people what they want, like Prey.
Well, like I said, I think Prey gives you so much of the visceral feeling of Predator, and I see a lot of people go like, "No, all you need is Predator and Prey." And I have we have a lot of affinity for Predators in particular. I, in particular, have a soft spot for Predator too. But I do agree that probably, I mean, this is easily the second best. I'm not saying, I don't necessarily agree with the people who are like, all you need are these, but.
Well, and it's the interesting thing about this, the Predator franchise in particular, is that you can kind of watch any of them independent of all the others.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
Except for maybe the Predator, but even still, that's kind of its own thing.
I mean, what in the Predator is not explained?
Yeah, I guess that's true. It's just it so wants to be part of. It so wants to unify everything.
It's bogged down in the meta narrative of the franchise, right? And that's one of its faults.
Yeah, I guess I would say not that it's
becoming entangled in that.
Not that you couldn't watch it, but that a lot of its problems are its attempts to try to make a mythology out of this, Whereas all these other ones, yeah, if you watch Predator, Predator 2, Predators, and this, they are already kind of anthology movies. The fact that Arnold never came back kind of helps.
Right. And it's honestly one of the weaknesses of the sister franchise we're talking about, Alien, right? Where it's like, okay, as soon as we become unmoored from Ripley, this franchise kind of doesn't know what it's doing anymore.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that and it has continued to struggle, and even now is sort of in a place of like, okay, but I still don't know if it's made a case for itself as a franchise.
I mean, look, we'll talk about Romulus next week,
which
I have my opinions about
a lot of the feeling I've gotten having, once again, I haven't, you've seen Romulus, I haven't seen it yet, but a lot of the feeling people are like, okay, yeah.
That is the feeling I have after Romulus is like, all right, I'll see where we're going with this.
Yeah, but I think people are like, I'm not necessarily like, we're back, baby. It's like, people are more like, I'm cautiously optimistic. But then there's also a TV show that is gonna not be part of that continuity. So it's a whole thing with that. I can't talk about the box office for this. I did mention what the top grossing movies of 2022 were. This was obviously not in that list, though. This movie was like one of the most watched things ever on Hulu, which makes sense.
The fact that people had easy access to this was at a time also when Hulu and like Disney Plus were starting to integrate more. So like a lot of people had access to this movie, and everybody watched it.
Everybody did, and
word of mouth got around.
It's the kind of thing where, like I said, I think this is a case where when I see critics talking about, God, it's such a shame this thing didn't get a theatrical release, I'm like, I kind of, but at the same time, like we're talking about, probably way more people watched this than would have. Because it's, I mean, once again, this is not a hot take, but it's so much easier for somebody to go like, oh shit, I'll take a look at this. If I just have to click a button, then would have gone out to the theater and, paid their whatever exorbitant fee to sit there and watch this. Well, and that's the thing
with the Predator franchise as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Like, when have any of them been some kind of smash success?
Well, that's
like the first one did pretty well for 1980 something.
Yeah, and it definitely caught on. Like it became instantly iconic, if not a blockbuster. But I think a lot of people found that in video stores though too. Yeah.
Yeah, like that was a success of the VHS era taking off. That was like the Predator poster and logo on a VHS cassette is how I imagine them, like in my head. And
I mean, honestly, a lot of Schwarzenegger's career was built on that.
Sure. So saying that it's a shame it wasn't in theaters, I think is more for guys like you and I, who's like, I want to get the theater experience for this movie. I don't know as if it would have triumphed as a theatrical release.
Well, I gotta say, the theatrical experience, and welcome to John's Soapbox. The theatrical experience is kind of a myth. Because most of the time when I go to the theater, I end up being like, God, somebody was a fucking asshole during the screening of it. Or, like this idea of this platonic idea where everyone is engaged in this movie. Oh, it's a beautiful romantic concept. I can count on one hand the number of times I've actually experienced that in a theater where like everyone is enraptured by this movie. Most of the time,
it also doesn't help that we don't have access to places like the Alamo.
I know, that's the other thing too. Is that, unfortunately, and that's why I'm saying I don't put all the blame on people. I do put a lot of the blame on the theater chains. I think a lot of the big multiplexes don't do a great job of creating an environment. Also, I think there's a lot of shoddy projection and sound, and there's not a lot of quality control. Yep. Once again, like I said, I think they're not doing themselves a lot of favors. The theater chains. Obviously we're not sponsored by any of them and never will be if they hear this.
But the popcorn is $9 a pop, so
who is it? Did you see the one at AMC that's doing bring your own bucket? If you bring a bucket, no matter what it is, they'll fill it up with popcorn for you. People are bringing big like Rubbermaid tubs and stuff.
I was gonna say I'm gonna go over to the Home Depot and get one of those big orange ones.
But I'm like, geez, by the time you're through a couple layers of that, do you even want it anymore?
I mean, yeah, but you just seal it up because you bought the lid and you'll take it home.
I'm just talking in general. That stuff doesn't age well.
Nah.
No, I've seen people roll up with the big fucking fill her up.
John, again, I used to work at a 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
We had the same policy with Slurpees, and I've seen some horrifyingly large Slurpee
I remember
refills.
that. Bring your oh boy, yeah. But we can talk about some highs and lows for this movie. And the low will bum you out.
Oh, man, it's going to be sexist bullshit, isn't it?
I tried to avoid something that was entirely that, because obviously there's a lot of just that. I will say though, it's not mostly that. The majority is far more on the positive side. So I'll let's see here.
As it should. This movie rules.
I like I said, I really think it's just so well crafted that if you're speaking on an objective level, look, if you're not into Predator movies, whatever, but like the idea that like I think this is a real hard movie to have like any like real valid like filmmaking criticism of. It's so tightly written, it's so well put together, editing, act, like I think across like this thing checks off every box. This is a quality piece of work.
A brisk hour 40.
Oh yeah, also that's a nice thing too.
I was talking with my partner last night. I was about to sit down and watch this movie, and I was like, "Well, I gotta watch this movie for the podcast. You want to join me?" And she like eyeballs me, and I say, "Well, it's only a minute. It's only an hour 40." And she goes, "Oh yeah, I can do that."
Yeah, make movies shorter, man. Things start to creep up into the 2-hour range. I'm like, oh god, do I even have time for this? Which is crazy. Anyway, okay, here this comes to us from IMDb user. Oh boy, love to spooge.
Oh God, John, why'd you pick this?
This is the good one.
All right, what does "I love to spooge" have to say?
Title of the review: very surprised. The trailer did not do this film justice. I originally had planned on not watching this because of the previous installments in the trailer. However, due to positive reviews both here and on Rotten Tomatoes, I decided to give it a chance, and boy, did I not regret it. Like most, I was tired of the cliches and the reboots, and when I saw the trailer, I thought this was such a cheesy money grab. However, it proved me wrong, and this film is actually extremely well executed. From a film analytical standpoint, I love the idea, by the way, that someone with the username Love to Spooge is like, now speaking as a film analyst,
My name is Raw Doggin 420, and I would like to talk about the historical inaccuracies of the misogynist nature of this film.
From a film analytical standpoint, I think what made it work was how quote-unquote serious they took this film, which typically does not work for sci-fi, but in this case, it nailed it. When I say serious, I mean they put in the efforts with great music, beautiful cinematic work, and the overall theme created by the actors and writers makes the movie deeply moving rather than a typical action parody. In sense, this is not a sci-fi that took place in the 1700s with Native Americans. It is more a 1700 Native American story that happened to include a sci-fi predator. This combination is difficult to execute, but they were able to do it quite convincingly. The pacing of the film is great, and there really is not any dull moment. There are a few parts I felt was a bit over-exaggerated, especially when they portrayed the protagonist's abilities. Oh, we couldn't avoid it, could we? But we can forgive that due to it being an action genre. Okay, back on it, true. I actually agree with that point. Every action hero is doing things a little spectacularly, whether they be a man or a woman. It's just the nature of the genre.
Yeah.
One area I would like to address is, here we go, how some negative ones criticize the female lead as yet another woke film. I disagree. Yes, one of the central theme is a coming-of-age rite of passage for a young person transitioning to adulthood, and this protagonist happens to be a female. However, there's nothing wrong with that, as empowering women to be strong, capable of and self-defense, and fighting back is a theme that bridges both sides of the political aisle. With that, I highly recommend people put away their bias and give this film a try, because it is quite a masterpiece. 10 out of 10 stars. Once again, from Love to Spooge. Women need to be empowered, and I need to spooge.
We all need to spooge occasionally, I suppose, and this person just loves to.
Yeah. And, of course. By the way, that's LUV, obviously.
Oh, of course. I had never assumed otherwise. And is the 2 a number 2?
Oh, you bet it is.
Hell
you
yeah.
better bet it is. Yeah.
The internet was a mistake.
What are we doing?
He
Uh,
says on his podcast.
Yeah, what my God. Oh boy. Okay, here's the thing. Digging through the lows, I have to find one that, it's tough.
In the year of our Lord 2022, certain political climate cannot be escaped. I understand that film and media criticism has reached a point where, at times, what it will just come down to is film stars woman of color equals bad for woke reasons.
Yeah.
I can disagree with that, but I can't argue it because it's trying to argue with a perspective that I just can't come to terms with. We're not living in the same consensus reality that, like, I'm witnessing a movie about a young woman struggling against the preconceptions of her gender and fighting a giant alien monster with a tomahawk on a rope.
And I gotta say,
and I can enjoy that.
I gotta say,
you can't, simply because it's a woman of color in the role, I don't know where we're at.
I gotta say,
we can't
too,
have a discussion.
The movie, there's a misogyny inherent in a lot of it, but the movie really isn't like primarily about that. I don't think it's over. Once again, it never feels preachy. It never feels like it was written from the ground up to make that point. It's just like, oh, that would be inherent in making this movie about this woman at this time in this culture. Yeah. Having said that, buckle up, Gorgoni.
Okay.
I tried to pick one that encompasses...
Embracing my sense of decency and outrage.
Yeah, because I tried to encompass one, as I always do, that captures sort of the tenor of the whole one-star thing. And this is at least attempting to write decently. It's not going to be great, though.
Okay.
And I'll tell you right now, here's the title. Overpraised only by fake fans / those who don't know Predator yet claim to. So I guess that's us, Gorgoni.
How many hours have we clocked in this season of the IP Squad, John?
I mean, what is it? Probably, I don't know.
Rough estimate.
15? 16?
Okay. We've watched every film in the Predator and or Alien versus Predator franchise up to this point?
Yeah.
You and I have
we've definitively watched
through
every Predator movie definitively now.
Yep.
Yeah.
You and I have been fans of this franchise since our youth. I want to say probably early teens, if not younger.
Oh yeah. Much younger for me, as you know.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, continue.
All right. As a real longtime Predator fan, and that's real all in caps, I was looking forward to this, especially after all the ratings, and that they said it's better than Shane Black's 2018 debacle. Yet after subsequent watches of Prey, I am clear that this movie is seriously overrated AF. I mean, it's just okay and nothing more. Believe it or not, the CG animals don't bother me because I knew this wasn't meant to be.
Hold on.
Yeah.
It's just okay, and this is a 1-star review?
Yep.
Okay, go on.
Believe it or not, the CG animals didn't bother me because I knew this wasn't meant to be a big budget. Hence, I can be reasonable. Though the CGI shot of the ship flying off literally looked like an awful PlayStation game. The only true credibility...
That's just not true.
No, I think all the CG is totally fine, including the animals. They all look really good, I think. The only true credibility Prey has is that it's better than the Predator, and yet, in a way, because the latter was so badly comedic and became taken as some parody, Prey is more insulting, as it's expected to be taken very seriously. And the fact it tries to rewrite things by saying the so-called first Predator in history was killed by a female native, parentheses, not Arnold, which would have been fine if Prey wasn't always constantly riddled with inconsistencies for character plausibility, particularly how darn easy it is for Naru to outsmart the Predator. I don't know why it's a trend / formula now that in order to show a quote-unquote strong female character, she must have no male love interest, must not have any male assistance, must begin the movie already at her zenith, meaning she already has all the skills required from the get-go, hence no real character growth. And the only thing holding her back is 99% of the men around her, all of whom must be overt idiots, while she must be cocky and have like zero setbacks in any of her attempts / challenges. That's all just Mary Sue shenanigans. Didn't any of the filmmakers learn how to refer to real female characters from the likes of Ripley or Sarah Connor? The way Naru beats the Predator was the easiest thing I've ever seen. Because as we witnessed in other Predator films, parentheses, the good ones, it takes more than just wits, because the alien too improvises to outwit its adversary, making the final duels very suspenseful. Prey has none of this. Whatever Naru thinks, she does it flawlessly, cause reasons. Including being able to pull a massive alien with her bare hands into quicksand, have two very convenient rocks between her head, which held down by the neck, and able to even understand alien tech way better than the Predator himself, apparently, who, by the way, bore the absolute worst design of the franchise, bar none. I swear the final battle in Prey was indisputably the worst. But what's interesting is no one, as in the overpraisers, seems to realize Naru is really the one who causes the death of her tribesmen. Don't believe me? Her bro specifically tells her not to go off to Area X, but she disobeys and has encounters with the quicksand bear, etc. And later her tribesmen appear because they're all there to bring her back. Then what happens? They all die, including later her bro. Hate the use of bro. So that's all on her, and yet no one, including her own tribe, ever acknowledged that in the end. So her tribesmen were jerks. Does that mean they all deserve to die so she can claim the top spot? Really? And I said that as written. Really? It was also funny she never mourns her bro's death. The lady just keeps talking about, you all think I can't hunt. Yet at the end of the day, all of that is only half of the problems. Where this movie also gets seriously wrong is the Predator lore itself. If you're a true Predator fan, you'll know Prey is littered with inconsistencies that contradict how Predators not only think, but also how its tech works. And no, I don't buy all that BS the overpraisers claim, because this is the first Predator, hence low tech. Really? Then how come the invisibility is more advanced than it is in all the other films? If you have to ask, what do I mean, then sorry, you're not as familiar with Predator as you claim. That's only, by the way, scratching the surface of what so many people get wrong about this movie, which seriously just goes to show how little people know about Predator. But the simple fact is not many do, because it's quite a massively popular franchise, so majority are fairly naive about the details and just don't care, frankly. If this was Star Wars, however, and people found inconsistencies with the Jedi, for example, the internet would blow up. But overall, Predators, though, suffers from too many callbacks, and Predator 2 are still the only worthy follow-ups to the original. If there's any consolation to what Prey did, it is that it didn't confirm the franchise is dead, and thankfully, because I would still love to see a proper, big-budget version of AVP being done right, 1 out of 10 stars. Oh, did I mention that was from Eisenthal?
Okay.
But you see what I mean about that's a person trying to go like, no, facts. I don't agree with them, by the way. That's not. I'm just saying, like, no. I tried to pick one that wasn't just like girl.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
I'm battling myself right now to point by point refute points brought up in this review. Yeah. But I think I will just qualify it by saying that at the start of the writing of that, this person has said they have watched this movie multiple times, and that it's just okay.
Yeah.
That being said, they gave it 1 star.
And then, at no point, where did I see anything that was remotely positive to make it okay?
Yeah, I don't know.
But also, anyway. classic IMDb review of reviewing other reviewers. That's just par for the course.
The Ouroboros of IMDb review being like, other people need to chill out. Like, that's just such a constant refrain.
People constantly feel that everyone is either over or under praising something. It's wild.
Yeah. I don't know. Look. The fact that there is even an assumption that this is the first Predator, I guess one of the posters does say like the hunt begins. But,
but that's more just.
I assume the Predators have been coming to Earth for thousands.
Actually,
of years. That's what the lore in AVP firmly establishes. Actually,
in the trivia, they talked about one of the early drafts of the script made it expressly clear that this was the first Predator to come to Earth, and they backed off on that. Actually.
Yeah, I think that's smart because I want to see Predators fighting samurai, and that takes place hundreds of years before this.
And also, we've seen constantly that each individual Predator chooses different weapons, a different way to present themselves. So This Predator has an advanced cloaking device, but more rudimentary weapons. That's how this one hunts. I have no issue with this.
Maybe depending on the technology level of the world they're going to, they pick a different loadout.
But you know what? I guess we're just not real Predator fans, Gergoni.
No, I guess not. And look, the fact that this guy never refers to the Yucha by their proper name makes me think he's not a proper Predator fan.
This guy 100% feels like somebody who should have mentioned that at least 10 times in that review. The fact they never even call them that is ridiculous. Absurd on his very face. How dare you, Mr. Trachtenberg? But also
the different biological makeups of the different Yucha clans which exist on their arid homeworld makes them differently compatible for different elements
actually kind
in
of
the biomes
surprised
of
this.
Earth. That's all I'm saying.
Also, I'm kind of surprised this dude doesn't like the Shane Black movie, honestly. I think that's really interesting to me because it feels like that would have been way up this guy's alley. But very strange. And yeah, of course, just in general, the classic real fans. You're not a real fan.
I'm a Star Wars guy, you know this,
Yeah.
and it's something that I've had to come to like hard terms with that fandom over the last, I don't know, 5 years or so.
I mean, probably the most interesting.
Since the start of the sequel era, so probably longer than that.
Yeah.
But it's the claim by some over a fandom, right? Is always where it comes down to hard feelings, is when people feel ownership over a thing because they've been enjoying it for their whole lives. And it creates this sense of entitlement that when someone brings a different perspective to your fandom, even if they are also enjoying the thing that you like.
But they're enjoying either a different aspect of it or looking at it through a different lens. That's wrong, because the way I view it is correct. And I think Star Wars is, I don't know if that was, probably not, it's not the only franchise to have that, and it's probably not even the first, but it does feel like it's the loudest it has the loudest people that put that out there.
I mean, Star Trek has it. It's the reason we have a Section 31 movie, right? Because there's people who see Section 31 and go, yeah, Star Trek, but badasses, cool.
And then there's some of us who are just, there are some of us who just are like, I don't need to watch that. Because it hurts my heart.
Good for you, John.
Yeah,
but I'm not. What we call that? We call that growth.
Yeah, I'm not. But I'm not. I'm not gonna be.
I remember somebody watching several seasons of Discovery, despite that heart hurting.
Yeah, well, that's really what. That's where I got the calluses. You come back stronger, right?
Yeah. All right.
The scar tissue of that is why I didn't watch Section 31. But I'm not also going to be out there going, and fuck you if you do like it, because you don't get Trek, man. I've started to try to use this thing about, like, that doesn't appear to be doing the things I like about Star Trek. That's different than saying, that ain't Star Trek.
I think that is a way healthier approach.
I think that's the way
it's that I hope to perpetuate across all the shows here on the Punch Up Entertainment Network.
I always quote the fine fellas over at the We Hate Movies podcast who always say it's okay to like a movie. Just because they don't like something and you do, we're not attacking you, or vice versa. It's okay to like a movie. It's also okay to not like a movie. There you go, folks.
Where the Predator franchise is concerned, it's had its ups and downs. You and I have talked through all of these films. I think we like different ones based on different criteria, but like the core of this film is this like man versus other man. Like if we want to break it down to like primal archetypes, right?
Well,
the other man just happens to be a super alien hunter.
But it's that I think primal is the word, and that's why it makes sense that it wasn't. They said the feral hunter? Is that the
feral predator? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling of this movie has. Is just like Trachtenberg and his collaborators on this did what this franchise needed to do, which is let's boil this down to its most primal, broad appeal, right? This whole idea about this is at its core a human versus something that's inhuman in any number of ways, in its mentality, in its technology, this whole idea. And that's really where I feel like that's why this is, to me, the most worthy sequel to the first movie. That's not shitty on the other ones, but just in terms of like, I think this is the first movie since that first one to really get to that core thing, which is particularly that third act of the first movie, where it really is just Arnold on his own having to figure out how to defeat this thing.
Totally. Yeah. And that is why I like the end of this movie. And for all the like, lighter female protagonist shouldn't be able to defeat this thing. It is like putting together the clever ingenuity of, okay, all of these pieces of who I am put together to try to beat this thing. Also, the fact that it irks me is like, she never had any like male characters helping her out. What about the noble sacrifice of her brother being
It's a
like
big moment in the movie.
Yeah. Oh, that frustrates the hell out of me. Anyway.
And like I said, the idea that they really make him not a piece of shit, you know?
Yeah.
And even the other guys are just generally pieces of shit, like from our perspective. But like they aren't like malicious for no, you know what I mean?
Well, they're annoyed because they're like, we have to go so far out of our way to drag back what's his name's crazy sister.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, okay, she does kind of get everybody killed. I'm not actually disputing that fact, but
she doesn't know that.
But she doesn't necessarily know that. And the fact that,
and also,
like,
if you want to play that game, then a lot of action heroes, I think, are on the line for some deaths.
Well, Arnold agrees to bring his team into the whole thing. That's
Yeah, and that's actually reflected in the end of that movie. We talked about the look he has at the end of the movie is not one of triumph.
I could say the same for Naru at the end of this film.
Yep.
It's not like she's celebrating the fact that she brought the Predator's head back.
No, she's changed once again. This idea too, the thing about like she already has all these awesome skills. She has no character growth. It's like, well, she has a lot of character growth. Maybe not in terms of she gained new fighting skills.
Yeah,
but
she has character growth in like accepting a level of responsibility for her actions.
This is not a thing to be taken lightly, you know. Anyway, it's a really good movie. The highest of recommends for this one. If you're watching through the franchise, this is a don't miss this one. All right, well, Gorgoni, next week on the show we wrap up our AVP season.
What a journey it's been.
What a journey it has been with 2024's Alien Romulus, which, yes, as I said, will be the first time I've watched this. You saw it. I didn't see it, and then when we started doing this, I went, you know what, I'm just going to hold off purposefully then and watch it for the show.
There are so many things I want to talk about with this movie.
I've avoided I've heard a couple things, but I've avoided a lot of the spoilers. And I really do like Fede Alvarez, who's the director of it. I'm a particularly big fan of his Don't Breathe films. And I like the cast. I'm very curious. I'm open to it. I always want these to be good. You know what I mean? As a fan,
we will talk about it next week. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm very, very curious. So anyway, that'll be next week on the show. But until then, the case file, it's closed.